Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're jumping into the NuclearRevenge archives. Our first story today comes to us from Tarzan is My Pony. Irritating vegan temp takes office pranks way too far, so I destroy her entire life paradigm. Let's jump right in. Just found this stub and couldn't stop reading. Felt compelled to share one of my more epic revenge tales from about 8 years ago. At the time, I was, male 27, a 7-year veteran at a large tech corporation, senior designer on the communications team by then. The senior copywriter went on mat leave, leaving a temp in her place. Although irritating in a non-descriptive way, she presented well and seemed competent enough. For later context, she was also an uber dog lover and a staunch and righteous vegan social justice warrior. There were frequent, mutual, and innocent team pranks, things like replacing a box of diet cookies with a box of Krispy Kremes, or covering the laser on someone's mouse, like, "Oh, you dog, you got me," kind of things. Now, let me fix that and let you get back to work. Being desperate for acceptance, the new temp started taking things a bit too far and seemed to focus their pranks directly towards me. Even after a few subtle reprimands from our manager, she continued. Things like slipping inappropriate photos or comments into a PowerPoint presentation on the shared drive I was about to give, or fake crying during morning stand-up just to gauge reactions. Her novelty wore off fast. Fast forward to the morning after my birthday, she knew I was going to be hungover. I get to my desk, red-eyed and thirsty as hell, grab my water bottle at my desk, which I always kept full, and started chugging like it was going to save my life. It was straight vodka, at least 2 full swallows before I realized. I go straight for my garbage bin to throw up, the slurry of alphabet soup, at least 6 cans of beer, and God knows what else she put in there, made darn sure I did hurl. I got most of the vodka out, but already being hungover, it made me instantly drunk again. Was not impressed. She came in laughing her brains out, taking full claim. I didn't narc on her, but the story made its rounds to HR, and she was given a stern warning. I would have accepted an apology, even remorse, but not a shred. In fact, she started calling me Pukey McGee to literally no one's fanfare. I let it pass for a few weeks, waiting for the attention to die down. Revenge Day finally arrived. She always left at 10 a.m. to get a Starbucks. I took this time to plaster lost dog posters anywhere outside the office she might stumble by on her way back. She fell for the bait, asking around, but no one was the wiser. Once she was cozy at her desk, I went to her car to stage a hit-and-run massacre. With chunks of fatty steak, a liter of fake blood, an old leash and collar, and a bag of fake fur, I went to work. I'd share the pic, but it's long gone, but it was very convincing. Looked like a leash was caught around her rear passenger axle, and the dog got clogged and shredded between the tire and wheel well. I left the collar dangling out the back with a particularly generous portion of gore and puddle of blood. It didn't take long before others noticed the lost dog posters or the gory car and put 2 and 2 together. Eventually, the owner of a white so-and-so with license plate such and such, "Please come to reception," went over the intercom. It's on. It was delicious. She was out in the lot sobbing so hard she was coughing, carefully placing chunks of bloody furry gore into a box. It took her an hour to gather every precious bit, crying the entire time. My theory was that she wanted to return the dog to its owner as best she could before calling the number on the poster. It was a shame there was no owner or dog, but she was too distraught to realize it was fake. I thought for sure the lack of bones or guts, and obviously fake sticky stage blood, would be a near instant giveaway, but to my utter shock, it wasn't. A scenario I wasn't expecting but welcomed just the same. It was just assumed the dog owner had printed the wrong number on the poster because the remains never were returned. She had the collar and leash cleaned and posted posters of her own in hopes of finding the owner. Given her reputation, there wasn't much sympathy offered. The righteous vegan dog lover was now a dog killer, and I took every chance I could to remind her of that. She took down all her gaudy dog lover crap off her desk and kept very much to herself for the remainder of her term. Bonus that she even left early, but not sure I can take credit for that for certain. There were a couple things in this story that got to me besides the fact that the revenge was pretty out of proportion. You'd think that when HR was made aware of the alcohol that she'd brought in and unknowingly given to a coworker, that she would have been fired on the spot. That's not the case, and that really makes me wonder about this company's practices. Do me a quick favor, have a look down below the video. If that subscribe button's still red, it means you're not actually subscribed to the KCC channel. Please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. Our next story today comes to us from Paul Alexander. Even a worm will have very dangerous friends. Let's jump right in. Not my story specifically, but hopefully it's okay due to my proximity giving me front row seats to this beautiful train wreck. So this happened back in high school, involving one very dear friend and his manic sociopath of a buddy. Let me outline the cast of this beautiful production. First, there was our victim, who was possibly just the nicest dude I have ever encountered in my life. I'll call him ND, nice dude. His home life was pretty good. While it was just him and his mother was incredibly busy, working a very high-paying job to give him a comfortable life. And as such, she wasn't home very often. So to make up for that and to assure her son was living comfortably, she provided him with an insane weekly allowance, like $500 insane. And so of course, being a teenager with more expendable income than he knew what to do with, he constantly blew it on weed, electronics, and nice clothes. Despite his comfortable living situation, he was by and large just a great dude. Always spent money on his friends, shared his weed, had movie nights. Honestly, I think he just felt a little lonely and wanted to share what he had with people he cared about. Then we have the agent of chaos in this story. We will call this absolute effing maverick Horse, due to an equally illogical high school nickname that he demanded everyone call him. Horse and I were buddies, mainly due to equal parts self-preservation and edgy teenage nihilism that simply wanted to release his special brand of unhinged out into the world. He was the friend you made because it was not a matter of if he got sent to jail, but when, and you'd really rather not have your name be a part of that headline. This wasn't to say that Horse was a bad dude. Talking to him was pretty chill for the most part, and I genuinely enjoyed our time together, but you got the vibe that there was this underlying problem going untreated. A nice enough dude if you were friends, didn't even really ever argue with people, but if you wronged him, then might as well skip the country and change your name. Horse didn't deal in an eye for an eye. He wanted your teeth, eyes, and maybe a few fingers while he was at it. Horse also bought a wild animal off someone at school. This is unrelated to the story at hand, but I feel it paints the picture of just how impulsive teenage boy who purchases a wild animal that another teenager clearly just found somewhere outside and brought into the school, all without having a single clue of how to care for it. I'm going to leave what type of animal unspecified, as it was the same as his nickname, but we'll say that it was a dog-sized herbivore that lived uncaged on his bedroom floor for several years. So into the story, nice dude came to school one day looking like he just got dragged behind a car for a few blocks. We're talking busted blood vessels in his eye, scrapes and cuts, as well as several swollen bits on his face. He was, and still is I suppose, a very dark-skinned guy. So just how bruised he was I can't tell you, but I was going to hazard the guess super. Normal friend reactions, including my own, were immediate concern, asking if he needed to go to the hospital, if he was alright, and what happened. Turned out he had invited a few guys over to his place the night before to smoke weed bought and paid for by him and play video games. Upon seeing nice dude's apartment and all his fancy toys, they decided to repay his kindness by beating the ever-loving crap out of him and horking his stuff. Rational friends told him to file a police report, to which he waved them off, not wanting to cause more issues, not to mention they had been smoking. Less rational friends suggested he get a strap, which he also declined. Then comes the least rational person in our entourage. Horse had not been present during nice dude's explanation of the night before. Being a chaotic nexus of violent urges, shaped like a teenage boy, he needed his sleep and a lot of it. So he never arrived at school less than an hour late. So he stumbles in as we're moving to a new class, takes one look at nice dude, and asks a single question. Who did it? Nice Dude, being a nice guy who hadn't even wanted police intervention, sure as hell wouldn't sick horse on these idiots, so he made up some lie about having a concussion and not remembering. Horse doesn't buy it and spends the rest of his day up Nice Dude's butt, demanding to know the exact names of everyone involved. Nice Dude eventually buckles, reluctantly naming each of the poor idiots who would likely eventually wish that he had gone to the cops instead. Of course, first came violent retribution, Horse's favorite kind. Being an absolutely huge dude with no regard for his own safety and well-being and less regard for others, he was a pretty intimidating guy. He spent the rest of the day skipping out on his classes, hunting down each of the guys involved, and beating them until my hands felt wet, his own words. Security stepped in once or twice, handling him with the same bored exasperation they faced all of our school's problems with. We went to a painfully underfunded school, with lots of gang, drugs, alcohol, pregnancy problems, and so the security swiftly stopped caring about their jobs. And if you couldn't guess, Horse was a bit of a problem student. Horse, what do you think you're doing? They stole from my friend. Security just gave a deep, exasperated sigh, clearly understanding that they can do nothing about a clear violation of the law of the land, and that the slight Horse had faced demanded swift and extrajudicial retaliation. But also, they did sort of get paid to make sure that these idiot kids don't Lord of the Flies themselves out of the gene pool all the time, so some sort of compromise needed to be made for the sake of keeping their jobs. Just don't send him to the hospital, okay? It was a gentleman's agreement to which Horse obliged. Maybe out of respect for the security guard who dealt with his crap, or maybe because his knuckles were bleeding and that kinda sucked. Either way, there was a world of options for making their lives a living heck, and Horse intended to explore as many as he could. At least until they broke and took his ultimatum. Give my friends his stuff back or I won't stop. But they had all weathered a beating, they were high on teenage hubris, and also probably weed. What was the worst he could do? Which is an incredibly stupid question to ask about a guy who once begged me to touch the bone poking out of his broken arm. I was crying more than he was. He proceeded to make the next few weeks hell. There was of course the petty things, knocked their lunch out of their hands, swiped their homework, locked one of them in the boiler room. Pretty much if you can imagine a bully from an 80s movie doing it, short of vehicular homicide, what the F, Goonies? He did it. Then came the heavier stuff. Brought in his dad's bolt cutters. Like I said, security was hot garbage in this school, also only ever watched the front doors, leaving back and side doors free to sneak in and out of, and snapped the locks off of 2 of their lockers, as one of them used a master lock, then proceeded to clear out their stuff. Textbooks, an iPod, which I now own, gym clothes, anything he could get his hands on would be swiped. The valuables would be kept, but things he didn't care about were usually ripped up and left in the hall to be discovered later along with the broken lock. Their cars were his favorite target by far. He stole their hubcaps, slashed their tires, left deep scratches along the side of their cars. One had a pecker scratched into their passenger door. At one point, he borrowed my tire iron to straight up remove one of their car tires and roll it off into the nearby park, where he ditched it in a patch of dry, fenced-off scrub that had yet to be burned back. Which would be a real fun discovery for the parks department, I'm sure. He had entertained the idea of getting a skunk into one of their cars, but gave up when he realized we lived in a city and he had no idea where to get or how to transport a skunk. Backpacks were snatched as well, mostly dumped in the ladies' locker room showers with the water on, though he did light one on fire if memory serves. Textbooks were free unless you ruined them, and then you had to pay out of pocket. And our school was very generous with what ruined meant. Covers fell off? Fine. All of the pages are drawn on, whatever. But if the whole book was destroyed, well, they couldn't do anything for you, and had to order a new one on your dime. He tried to tell a teacher that one of them had cheated off him, but given his scholastic history, that was quickly tossed out as dumb, and sit back down, Horse. The final nail in the coffin was ruining a senior's relationship with the girl he'd been dating since freshman year. So Horse had quite a few lady friends on account of being a very large, intimidating guy who would take any excuse, like perhaps a pretty girl complaining about a creep, to start a fight. Needless to say, they were keen on helping him out. One girl I'll call Praying Mantis decided to help in his crusade. managed to finesse pecker picks out of our hapless senior. Of course he had a girlfriend, but he was also a teenager, and Praying Mantis was a very pretty girl. Sweet-talked him all the way out of his pants, and then proceeded to send every photo to his girlfriend and spin a tale about how she had been doing adult things with him for 6 months now, how she hadn't known that he'd had a girlfriend, and she felt so bad. Of course, teenage girls are kinda dumb, and Praying Mantis got called promiscuous and a bee and all sorts of other names. But come the next day, we still find the cheating senior's butt very much dumped. After about a month or so of non-stop abuse, Horace never really felt an obligation to go to class, so he could spend all his free time on revenge if need be. Teachers just passed him with D's to get him out of their classes. He reminded them of his ultimatum. That evening, lo and behold, Nice Dude got a knock on his door and his muggers were back, this time with most of his things in tow. They didn't return everything. I believe a few games and a Blu-ray player were not returned, but Nice Dude lied and told Horace he got everything back for the sake of ending his rampage. I do want to say that Horace faced some sort of punishment for his many crimes. However, over his career as my friend, he had informed me of so many suspensions, detentions, and extra work that he never planned to do that it all sort of blended together after a while, and I can't tell you how long he was out of school. But I can say that he was a junior both my junior and senior years. I had to remind myself that we're reading from the NuclearRevenge subreddit because, oh my gosh, these revenges go overboard. But let's just consider that it is NuclearRevenge and say that Horace was a pretty good guy because he's the kind of person that stood up for his friends. It does make me wonder where Horace is going to be later in life though. Sounds like the kind of person that may be spending a lot of time in a very specific hotel upstate. Check out both OPs linked in the description down below. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.